It's easy to think of nature as something separate from us, right? Something you go visit on the weekend. But the truth is, we're not just visitors. We're part of it. And every single thing we do, from making a sandwich to charging our phones, has an impact. It all adds up to our human footprint.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start by really cementing our place inside the ecosystem. Then we'll get into the invisible dangers, the chemical poisons that work their way up the food chain. After that, we tackle the super visible problem of plastic. Then we'll zoom out to see how our biggest activities are changing the planet's basic operating systems. And finally, we'll talk about what all this means for our shared future.
Okay, first things first. We have to get this one idea straight. We are not outside of nature looking in. We are smack dab in the middle of the world's food webs. Every choice we make directly plays a part in how energy and resources move all around us. Now, here's what's so tricky about all this. A huge oil spill? Yeah, that makes the front page. It's obvious. But honestly, some of the worst, most widespread damage comes from pollutants you can't even see. They just quietly build up, day after day, year after year, until an entire ecosystem just hits a breaking point. And that leads us right to one of the scariest of these invisible threats, chemical pollutants. We're specifically talking about the non-biodegradable kind, the stuff that nature just can't break down and get rid of. To really get this, there are two key terms we need. First up is bioaccumulation. So imagine a little bit of a toxin, say mercury, gets into one single fish. That fish's body can't process it, so the mercury just stays there, building up and building up for its whole life. Now, that brings us to our second term, biomagnification. And this is where things get really dangerous. A bigger fish comes along and eats, say, 100 of those little fish. Well, it doesn't just get a big meal. It gets all the mercury from all of those fish concentrated right into its own body. So let's just make that super clear. Bioaccumulation happens inside one creature. But biomagnification is the chain reaction, the way that poison gets more and more potent as it climbs from prey to predator, all the way up to the top of the food chain. This whole idea was blown wide open for the public by the biologist Rachel Carson. Her incredible book, Silent Spring, was a wake-up call. It showed how a chemical sprayed on a farm over here could have absolutely devastating effects on animals hundreds of miles away. And DDT is the perfect example. Let's trace its journey. It starts on crops, rain washes it into rivers, tiny plankton absorb it. Small fish eat the plankton, bigger fish eat them, and then, at the very top, birds like bald eagles eat those big fish. By the time that DDT got into the eagles, it was so concentrated and made their eggshells paper thin, and their populations just plummeted. But look, this isn't just a story about animals. A truly tragic event in Japan showed the devastating human cost of biomagnification. In a place called Minamata Bay, a factory was dumping industrial waste loaded with a nasty type of mercury. That poison built up in the fish and the shellfish. And for the local people who relied on seafood for their diet, the results were horrific. We're talking severe brain damage, paralysis, and children born with terrible birth defects. Minamata became this terrible, real-world lesson in how we can end up poisoning ourselves. So mercury showed us the danger of an invisible poison. But our next topic is a pollutant that is anything but invisible. Let's shift gears and talk about plastic. It's incredibly useful, it's versatile, and it is absolutely everywhere. And the amount of it we're making is it's almost impossible to get your head around. It has exploded since the 1950s, and by 2060, we're projected to be making a staggering 1.8 billion tons of it every single year. So where does it all go? Well, check out this journey. A plastic bag gets into a river. The river carries it out to sea. Then the sun and the waves break it down into these tiny, tiny particles called microplastics. But it doesn't stop there. Those little bits can get carried up into the clouds with evaporated water and then travel on the wind, ending up in the most remote places on Earth. We're talking Arctic snow and the peaks of mountains. And the consequence is that plastic is now in everything. Fish and birds mistake it for food. It's been found in zooplankton, the very foundation of the marine food web. We are now eating it, drinking it, and breathing it. It's been found inside our bodies, even in newborns. And here's where it gets crazier. Those little plastic bits act like sponges, soaking up other toxins and delivering them right into the food chain. Okay. So we've talked about the stuff we add to the environment, right? Chemicals, plastics, but our impact goes deeper.
our biggest activities are fundamentally changing the rules of the game, altering how energy and matter cycle across the entire planet.
Let's look at three huge ones. When we cut down forests, we're not just removing trees, we're removing massive carbon storage tanks and messing with rainfall patterns. When we build cities, we're paving over habitats. And when we do industrial farming, we're basically taking all the good stuff out of the soil and shipping it away, breaking that natural cycle of decay and renewal. And here's the kicker. None of this is happening in a vacuum. It's all connected. You clear a forest to grow crops, that releases carbon, which heats up the planet, which then puts more stress on other forests and farms. These connections create feedback loops that can push a whole system right over the edge. So where does all this leave us? Well, it leaves us in a world where we have to finally realize that what we do in our backyard can have consequences on the other side of the planet.
Just think about this for a second. With our global food system, we're not just moving fruit and vegetables around. We are literally moving the nutrients, the fertility, out of the soil from one continent to another. We're breaking these ancient, local cycles that ecosystems rely on. But here's some good news. Because the problems are global, people are starting to work on global solutions. There's a growing awareness. In fact, right now, countries are negotiating a legally binding UN treaty to finally get a handle on plastic pollution. That's a huge deal. It shows we can work together on this stuff.
And that really brings us full circle. We've seen how one tiny fleck of plastic, or DDT, can travel the world and climb the food web. That means our own actions, even the ones that feel small, are part of this massive global system. So the question I want to leave you with is this. Knowing all that, what's one choice you can make right where you are that could send a positive ripple out into the world? Thanks for watching.